Okay, the federal income tax is a complete and total fraud. The IRS's administration of the tax is a complete and total fraud. The Department of Justice enforcement of the tax in court is a complete and total fraud, and the federal judge's enforcement of the tax in the manner that they've been doing for the last 65 years is a complete and total fraud, so much so that it goes to the extent of constituting a judicial rebellion against the Constitution, against the Supreme Court, and against the form of limited government that the Constitution provides for within this republic, where taxes are supposed to be uniform, not graduated. Graduated taxation is the second plank of the Communist Manifesto, and it's been what's getting enforced against the American people since the 1960s, when the federal judges used judicial legislation to change the law from an indirect tax under Article 1, Section 8 into a direct tax without apportionment under the 16th Amendment, which is a total fraud. The tax is not a direct tax under the 16th Amendment. It has never been a direct tax under the 16th Amendment. The Supreme Court ruled in 1916 in Brushaber and Stanton v. Baltic Mining, the two controlling decisions on the tax, that it was inherently indirect. Income is the mechanism that measures the amount of tax owed on the activities conducted that were subject to an impost, duty, or excise. Income is not the object of the tax. It's not the subject of taxation. It's the yardstick by which the amount of tax owed is measured. The word direct is not in the 16th Amendment. And more importantly, what the IRS has been doing, arguing it's a direct tax, and it's frivolous to say it's not direct and without limitation, which is what the D.O.J. argues in court. And the federal judges have been ignoring the fact since the early 1960s, that there is no enabling enforcement clause in the 16th Amendment to authorize Congress to write law to enforce anything new allegedly created by the amendment. This is one of the reasons why the Supreme Court said it's not a new or direct tax. It's still an indirect tax. The 16th Amendment harmonizes the operation. It doesn't create new powers or create new subjects. And there was no taxation of American labor before the 16th Amendment. And in fact, there was no taxation of American labor after the 16th Amendment until World War II and the victory tax. The Supreme Court has consistently held the tax is an indirect tax under the 16th Amendment, and it is subject to the limitation of uniformity. And graduated taxation isn't in the Constitution. It's in the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. A heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. And that's what the judges have been enforcing on you through their rewriting of Section 61 gross income, which does not list salaries and wages as a source of income under Section 61. Now, salaries, wages, and compensation are all listed as three distinct sources of income to non-resident aliens under 1441B, but Section 61 removes two of those terms, and the judges put them back with judicial legislation in the 60s. And ever since then, they've been taxing your labor as though you were a slave and had no recourse. Now, here's why it's all a complete and total fraud. Subject matter jurisdiction in the federal courts, the authority of the court, requires that there be a power granted to tax and that there be a power granted for Congress to write law to enforce the tax. We see both of these things in Article 1, Section 8. At Clause 1, we have the powers to tax. Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, impose duties, and excises. There's your power granted to tax. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, the original necessary and proper enabling enforcement clause, says Congress shall have all powers necessary and proper to carry out in execution the foregoing granted powers. So there you have the two constitutional elements necessary for the federal court to show subject matter jurisdiction. The third element is they have to show the law that was authorized and made enforceable. And when you go to court arguing that the tax is owed under the 16th Amendment, it's impossible to show a congressional authority to write law to enforce any new power to tax allegedly created. The courts have been lying to you, cheating you, robbing you for 75 years, just like they lied to you about Roe v. Wade. There's no authority in the Constitution for an opinion on abortion or a law, just like they lied to you like affirmative action. The solution to prejudicial discrimination is not more prejudicial discrimination applied in a reverse form. And the solution to the government agencies having a hard time doing their jobs is not to let them make laws with regulations that they then enforce as though they were Congress. All of these nonsensical liberal philosophies have been pulled back down by the Supreme Court in just the last year or so. And the income tax needs to go too, because no federal court has subject matter jurisdiction to enforce a direct tax under the 16th Amendment. The whole concept of that violates every single precept in the Constitution, which calls for a constitutional republic, uniformity in treatment of the law, and no direct taxation unless apportioned to the states, and requires that the government allow the people to prosper on their own by keeping the fruits of their own labor in the pursuit of happiness. There is no law that taxes the American people's labor. The original income tax law was a tax on taxable income, not the American people, and taxable income was income earned by non-resident aliens subject to the impost that was enacted as a tariff act. The Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act of October 3rd, 1913 is the original income tax legislation. A tariff is an impost. An impost is one of the three forms of indirect taxation authorized. It's not direct. It's not new. It's not unlimited. It's not without apportionment. It's not without proportionate imposition to the states, according to the census. None of it is true. It's all a fraud. The IRS is a fraud. The D.O.J. is a fraud. The federal judges are in rebellion against America, the Constitution, the Supreme Court, your freedom, liberty, and a limited form of government, which is the central precept. There are no unlimited powers to do anything except possibly wage war under a declaration of war by Congress. There are no unlimited powers to tax. The 16th Amendment didn't do away with that founding principle that all powers are limited. Indirect taxes must be uniform, and direct taxes cannot be collected from the American people. The government has been actively violating that command for 75 years, fraudulently deceiving the American people into believing that the 16th Amendment somehow created a new power for the federal courts to enforce new laws when there's no enabling enforcement clause in the amendment to authorize that. Subject matter jurisdiction cannot be established in the courts under the 16th Amendment. This is a constitutional fact. Why no attorneys in this country are arguing this? Well, go ask them. And while you're at it, why don't you ask them how subject matter jurisdiction is taken under the 16th Amendment when Congress has no authority to write law and the courts can't take jurisdiction to do anything except enforce constitutionally authorized law that has actually been written by Congress. It's indirect, not direct. You want proof? Go read the congressional record. I got it on my website, taxfreedom.com. When they redeclared the federal income tax under Donald Trump, effective January 2018, the law was passed in December of 2017, and before they could pass the law, they had to put a constitutional authority statement on the record of the congressional record to even bring the legislation to the floor to be debated as a bill. And of course, the legislation passed. Donald Trump signed it. So what was the constitutional authority statement for that new piece of income tax legislation that enacted the exact same income tax that we had before, just with different brackets and threshold numbers for entering each bracket. What was the constitutional authority statement? Did they write the direct tax? Did they say it's authorized under the 16th Amendment, inferring it's authorized as a direct tax, the way it's been enforced for the last 75 years? Is that what they wrote? 16th Amendment? No, that's not what they wrote. What they wrote is what I've been telling you for 30 years. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. Impost, duty, and excise. Imposts on foreigners, foreign persons in foreign places, and foreign imports. Duties on exported goods. Excises on commodities, licenses, and corporations. Impost, duty, and excise doesn't tax the labor of the American people. They're prohibited from doing so by law. Title 15, Code Section 17 says the labor of a human being is not a commodity or article of commerce. And that removes the labors of the American people from subjectivity to excise taxation under Article 1. So you can't claim all vocations are subject to an excise tax. It's only the licensed, like alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and petroleum fuels. The whole tax system is a fraud. Complete and total fraud. None of the money goes in the Treasury. All the money taken from your paychecks all year long is illegally and unconstitutionally routed around the Treasury to the Federal Reserve Bank, a private corporation. Why is a private corporation cashing your tax check, getting all the money withheld from your paycheck all year long, and getting all the money sent in on April 15th with the Form 1040s? Why isn't it going in the Treasury as required by law under Section 7809, 7806? All deposits of collected tax have to be deposited in the Treasury, 7806. It isn't being done. Why not? Because it isn't tax. It's voluntary contributions, and they can do whatever they want with voluntary contributions. And what they're doing is collateralizing the $35 trillion in debt they've run up. It's a peonage system. The Americans are being treated like the peons on the plantation system of the 11th century. Well, all the peons get a little plot of land to work all year round. And come harvest time, the master comes by and tells you how much your annual harvest and fruits of labor you actually get to keep, if any. And he takes the money, and if you object, he kicks you off the plantation. You lose your land or your job. And you're thrown into the wilderness to die with the wolves. And the peons have no say in how much they have to turn over. It's arbitrary and capricious every year. And they have no say in how the money is spent. The master takes it, he gives it to his whores, he gives it to his court, he gives it to his munition suppliers, he gives it to himself and his family, and he gives it to his ruler, the Federal Reserve Bank. That's the ruler, the master on the hill of the peonage plantation. It's the master on Capitol Hill. You've been enslaved by Congress, who keeps you divided and fighting amongst yourselves based on the brackets of the income tax and the different laws applied to the different classes of people defined therein. He keeps you divided and fighting against yourself in a system of class warfare, which is what the second plank of the Communist Manifesto is designed to do. Divide the population so that they'll fight amongst themselves and not realize they're being ruled, controlled, destroyed by the Politburo, who are the ones looting the Treasury and enriching themselves at the expense of the nation and the people, who are too distracted with the class warfare, yelling about race or gender or all of the other nonsensical crap the liberals throw into the media discussion to distract you from the fact that you have been made a slave. And the only way out is to end the income tax system. So if you need help dealing with the IRS, get over to www.irszoom.com and get the letter ordered that you need. If you want to get informed, get over to tax-freedom.com and start reading the articles, or go back and look at and listen to the videos I've been producing on this channel for the last month. The tax system is a fraud. It's destroying America. It's destroying representative government. Because no politician can represent the whole of the American people anymore. They have to pick one class or the other. You have a divided system, a system of class warfare, not unified representation. And the federal judges are the ones doing it to you. These treasonous, seditious bastards have thrown away the concept of limited government and limited powers and are enforcing the income tax as though it's a direct tax with no limitations on all labor and all monies earned. You might as well be a slave. All they have to do is raise the rate to 100%, and you will be. So wake up, America. It's not a tax system. It's not funding the government. It's funding your own enslavement and destruction. And look at what the bank is doing now. $6 trillion on Wall Street waiting to buy in at a market that's so overvalued it ain't funny. While on Main Street, a depression is looming. No one can get a loan. Credit cards are maxed out. Inflation has run the price of goods so high. And it's not monetary inflation. It's intentional energy inflation. By increasing the cost of energy, they increase the cost of goods at every single step of the production and distribution of the goods. All goods. That's like a VAT tax, imposing extra cost at every single level of production and distribution. A VAT tax is also unconstitutional. Federal government doesn't have the legal power to tax retail sales. They don't have the legal power to flat tax all labor. All of these constitutions, flat tax, sales tax, VAT tax, they're all just as unconstitutional as the current system. And we should not be trading one vile criminal system for another. The point is to put the politicians out of power and take the power back. It's our wallets that possess the power, not their authority, alleged authority, to steal it from us. And it's the judges that are doing the stealing. Why the Supreme Court hasn't reined this nonsense in, you tell me. Why hasn't the Supreme Court reined in this rebellion in the lower courts? They're arguing there's no more limitations on the power to tax. We can steal from you whatever you want, label it tax, and there's nothing you can do about it. Bunch of Orwellian pigs. Orwellian pigs. The judges are the ones doing this to you. If you want your country back, you're going to have to challenge them, aren't you, on subject matter jurisdiction, and put this into the media till they can't ignore it anymore. Because I've been trying to get a judge to talk to me about it in public for 30 years. None of them will appear. No attorneys, no judges will appear to defend the system against the narrative I just laid out for you in 10 minutes. It's time, America, to call these bastards on their shit.